Hello, I'm Darby McDevitt, and I'm the narrative director on Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
I really appreciated the evolution of Edward Kenway. He kind of starts out as an outsider, a pirate, and an opportunist, but eventually he finds his purpose in that overarching Assassins Templars conflict. So I wanted to ask you, are we going to see a big evolution like this for Eivor in Valhalla? And if so, how would you describe that?
Eivor has their own arc in this story. It's quite different from Edward's. Just as a personal preference, me, the creative team on this, we don't want to repeat ourselves. There is a kind of a superficial similarity in that both of them, Edward and Eivor, are outsiders to this conflict when they first get introduced to it. But I think the story has diverged quite drastically from there. Eivor has his or her own motivations that are quite separate from the Assassin-Templar conflict, but as they kind of try to achieve their goals, they find a lot of parallels and overlap. Not always easy parallels, but I don't want to give too much away, but I would say to be prepared to be surprised, because it's not going to follow the same contours as Black Flag.
In the demo, I spent the better part of 20 minutes facing off with a boss named Thor the Fishmonger, and
Nice.
he kicked my butt, seriously. Beyond it being a really tough fight, I noticed he mentioned his relationship with a Saxon woman named Athelswig. I did some Googling and I couldn't find that particular name. Are these characters inspired by any real people, or do they represent historical figures?
So who you found actually is a people who we call the lost Drengr of Ragnar Lothbrok. And these are characters who were part of Ragnar Lothbrok's crew back when he invaded England 10 years before this. If you know history, or if you've watched any Viking-themed shows, Ragnar Lothbrok dies in Northumbria in like 865, I think. So we wanted to tell a bit of that story, but that was outside of our time period. So what we did was we came up with these characters who were part of his army, and now that their jarl, their king, is gone, they feel useless. And each one of them, they've kind of spread to the four corners of our game, and they've just taken up new lives. But their only dream is to die in combat and join Ragnar in Valhalla. So it's just a side story that you stumbled upon, but this particular Drengr is the Norse word for like the ultimate badass warrior. A Drengr, or Drengir plural, is somebody who embodies all the courageousness, all the honor, and all the badassery of a warrior. And so these Drengr, they just want to die, gloriously. And when Eivor comes across them, they see an opportunity to do this. And the one you saw has a little kid, right? And it's like, kid, I'm going to show you how a warrior dies. And so each one of the Drengr that you come across will have a completely different vibe and a completely different story. But that's just one of the many, many side stories we have in our game.
That's awesome.
I'm glad he kicked your ass.
Oh my God.
They're badass Drengr,
Yeah. I tried to avoid him because I was like, I can't do this. And the checkpoint, like, he followed me. That Drengr followed me and really wanted he wanted me to give him a proper death. So
maybe we can clean that up. If you should be able to say no, not this time.
Right. So I wanted to draw off of that question. There were several missions based around myth and folklore. I didn't get the chance to do the Black Shuck or the Cordelia and Regan boss fights, but I did come across a world event where a little girl asked me to find Skinfaxi. I think that's how you say it, a mythical horse in Norse mythology. How often can we expect quests like this to draw off of myth and folklore, and how do you balance that with more grounded historical quests?
Yeah. Well, the character you're talking about, the horse is just named Skinfaxi because of the myth. It's not an actual mythic horse. It's just somebody's horse. Did you actually go rescue the horse?
I did.
Yeah. Okay. So this is something you find that's very, very common in Saxon and Norse culture, is that they just name people after the gods and name things after the gods. There are a lot of Thors and Thorbjorns and and things like that in everyday culture. So the mythology that they lived kind of exists in their mind at all times. It exists on an emotional layer, and they use that to to inform their daily lives. So Skinfaxi is just a horse.
Gotcha.
But this girl named it that because of mythical connotations.
In the demo, I was able to switch between male and female ʼeɪvɔːr by pressing the Animus button in the menu. Is this why both genders have the same name? What are you able to say about that mechanic?
So I won't say too much, but the gender choice in our game has a meaning. It has a meaning in the overall story. There is a very specific reason for it. And the reason is something that you will discover as you play. You're not going to boot up the game, in November and say, oh, that's why you can choose. It's going to be a mystery that carries through the game. But to add to that mystery is, yes, you can at any time you want go into the Animus and you can say, I want to leave the Animus and go back to the present day, or I want to switch gender from male to female. Now, why this is a mystery in this game, but I will say the answer to it has everything to do with the science fiction nature of our series. Our series is not just a historical series; it's a science fiction series, and we deal with genetic memory, and we have this cool Animus, and we tried to push that concept to its logical conclusion with this gender choice. So it's not just a superficial thing. There is a reason for why you can choose male and female. And we hope that you, as you play through our story, you start to pick up on these things. And we actually removed a few little key story moments from the demo you played, so we wouldn't spoil it too early.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good to know. And I'm glad you mentioned present day. In previous interviews, you've said we're picking up where Odyssey left off with Layla, but you've also mentioned that you found a way to blend present day into new types of experiences, something you've been wanting to do for years. It was like a big tease. Can you share anything about that?
Did you find part of it?
I did not.
Okay, you didn't find it, but some people did, so you'll see it. Yeah, because you didn't play it, I'll just sort of generally gloss on it. But the idea is, I've worked on Assassin's Creed for a long time, and I've heard the same conversations that go pro and against modern day. I'm a fan of the modern day, but I always have said that it has to be done right. It has to be done well. It has to serve the game. It has to make people want to play it. And there are people who love the modern day, but there are also people who find that it intrudes with the historical story that's being told, which, to be fair, is usually 95% of every game. So a long time ago, we started thinking about this idea of like, what if a lot of the reasons that people don't gel with the modern day, let's say, is because it stops the experience, right? You'll be playing as Edward or playing as Connor or Arnaud or whatever, and it'll just stop, and you'll go, whoop, and you'll pull out, and now you're in an office or a warehouse somewhere, and you don't have enemies to fight, you don't have cool parkour to do, you don't have puzzles to solve. It's literally a separate game in a way. So what we did was we found a way to bring the present day into the simulation. And what if there was a way to just say, you're playing as Eivor, and then boom, you stop, and now you're Layla, and you keep going, and you do lots of cool present day stuff within the simulation space itself, and modern day stuff comes to you. So you're using the same, or some of the same, skills and abilities and affordances you have as Eivor as Layla, and that makes the transition smooth. It means that there's no hitch or hiccup, and it means that even people who aren't interested in the modern day are suddenly like captivated by this new thing they get to do, and it hasn't been a bump in the road whatsoever. And so the response we've gotten from what we've done in the game is quite positive, and I really hope down the road, I hope it becomes a staple for Assassin's Creed, because I really like it, and I think we could do a lot with it.
I am kicking myself that I missed that. I'll be honest with you. I'm gonna have to look around at some of my, fellow YouTubers' gameplay to see that. That sounds incredible.
I know one guy found it. So
awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. You've said that Valhalla will bridge the gap between the hidden ones and the Order of the Ancients with the Assassins and Templars. I'm sure you don't want to spoil exactly how that happens, but I wanted to ask, how difficult is it to weave that connection into a franchise that's this long, has this much history, and make it all work?
This particular game, it didn't actually feel too difficult because past writers, to sort of to bolster the feeling of the Assassin Templar conflict back since AC2, especially in AC Brotherhood, they've often gone into history and stuck their hands in all kinds of things to bring this historical conflict to life. So Brotherhood was set during the in Rome during the Renaissance, and same thing with AC2, Venice and Florence. But there were all these cool truth puzzles, and they just went everywhere, right? They went to World War II, they went to Cleopatra and whatever. That was a lot of writers having fun with, like, oh, we could expand this series forever, couldn't we? Then it comes time to, like, hey, we actually want to make a game set in Egypt. Okay, so let's go back and see what those writers did. Okay, let's honor some of that, and they missed this area and this. The cool thing about our time period is that most of the past writers have kind of avoided this period. There's little drops and hints here, but kind of true to the idea that this is the Dark Ages, where there's not much historical records. There's also not much like Assassin's Creed lore written about this area. So we know that a few characters had Viking ancestors in the past, and we know that, some things were touched on, but not in a very, very deep way. So we actually had quite an open palette of colors to play with, and it was really fun. So we've like packed this world full of historical references to old assassins and or let's say old hidden ones and all the Order of Ancients. I'll just give you a small tidbit to sort of dream on, but the spread of the Roman Empire starts at exactly the time that Bayek and Aya are starting the hidden ones, right? So as the Roman Empire expands greatly under Augustus and Tiberius and all this, the hidden ones in the Order of Ancients go with it. And so by the time you reach England, and England, the Romans stayed for 350 years or so, we get to play with that idea that, okay, the hidden ones in the Order of Ancients reached out to this outer edge and maybe even beyond it. And so we get to play with a lot of that. There's a lot of historical sediment in our game. There's the Neolithic peoples of Britain. There's the Britons themselves, the Celtic peoples. There's the Romans. Then the Saxons come. They were pagan. Then they converted to Christianity. And now there's the Norse coming. So all these layers exist all at the same time. And with it, the assassins, or the hidden ones in the Order of Ancients, kind of intermingle with all that. It was a long answer.
No, I appreciate all of that context. I'm sure people are going to love that. I have a viewer question from Twitter. Aditya asks, how do you keep side questing feeling fresh? Do the side quests intersect with the main story, or do they exist independently? In previous games, though the stories were intriguing, it felt like they boiled down to saving X from Camp Y.
Yeah.
How do you address this in Valhalla?
Okay, this is my favorite question that I could possibly answer. Because it starts with, I think we take RPGs for granted, and the story structures of RPGs for granted. If you think about it, most RPGs, you play some sort of like gilded hero, right? You're just a hero. And so it makes sense that you have a personal main quest story, and then there's all these side quests of people asking you for help, right? And this works with mercenaries or medjais or just general heroes, right? When we started thinking about this game 2.5 years ago, we thought, does it make sense for a Viking to come over into England and start just helping people? And we said, no, let's not do that. Let's actually change the way we tell this story so that it makes more sense for a Viking. So the concept of side quests is actually gone from our game. That's not to say there are lots of cool little stories, but we don't call them side quests. What we've done instead is we've taken a kind of a main story, and we've broken it up into many more long form epic stories that have the feeling of a feature-length film. So when you start in your settlement, you might say, oh, East Anglia, there's stuff happening in East Anglia. I want an alliance with those people, because as somebody who's shown up in Britain with not too many friends, I want an alliance with the people of East Anglia. So I'm going to go over there, I'm going to meet the right people, I'm going to do the things necessary to put an alliance, or put a person in power, in this case Oswald, put him in power. And I don't know if you got to the end of the wedding, but it ends with kind of a handshake, like, I did for you, you're going to do for me one day. And that's the general story, is Eivor is going to travel around all of England into these big territories and get involved in these very big long form stories. Now there will be a let's say main story thread that travels through them. But the idea of just vacuuming up side quests is gone. What we have instead are tons and tons of little world events, like the little girl who has the horse. We don't put those in your quest log because it doesn't make sense that Eivor would go, oh, remember to help this girl. We want you to help the girl if you feel like helping the girl. So so this is what I mean by side quests. There's still tons of this narrative content, but we changed it so it's up to you to be interested in it. We will track the things that Eivor is interested in, but the world is filled with all kinds of other things that we want you to be interested in. So you could just as easily say, you know what, I'll kill the horse or I'll go away. And, you know, you just didn't do that one. But the world gave you an opportunity. But it felt, for some reason, wrong for us to say, Eivor, like sitting them, okay, remember to help this girl's horse across the road. That just doesn't make sense for a Viking.
Right.
So I think you're going to find the same amount of narrative content in this game that you would expect in other AC games, but it's going to be served up to you in a very different way. You're going to feel like by the end of this game that you have gone through 2 seasons of an amazing television show, some of which was deeply personal to Eivor, and others were more about these sort of grander kind of alliance making and just meeting interesting people. And those characters now, because we've focused on long form stories, you can fall in love with them more. They can actually reappear in the story in different ways. And then, of course, all of these alliances that you make, it wouldn't be a good story if they didn't pay off in 1 or 2 different ways. So that was the very long-winded answer to that story, but it's my favorite aspect of the game. And I think that you won't see it right away. It's a small demo is not going to give you that feeling, but when you get to your settlement and you start going out and taking these alliances, you're going to start to feel how different this game is and this story is. And so I hope you made a successful alliance with Oswald.
Yes, I sure did.
And what happened with Finnr, or not Finnr, Rued? How did that all play out?
Right. So I was actually going to ask you about that. I went with Oswald's suggestion to be compassionate and let him live, which I noticed Rued was really angry about. Like he wanted to die in that fight, which was awesome to see that. It made a lot of sense to me. But and then Rued reappeared at the wedding, and I chose to fight for Oswald because I didn't want him to die. But how could that have? And like, could Oswald have died there?
I'm not going to spoil that for you, but there is a different output if you let him fight. But I won't spoil it for you. I want to see if anyone else did it. Yeah. So so you saw basically just the last, say, act and a half of a 5-act story. I like that you said that Rued seemed angry that he didn't get to die there. The entire first 2, let's say 3 acts of the story that you didn't get to play is all about that concept of honor and about when people insult your honor. And Eivor and Finnr both are trying to, teach Oswald what it means to respect honor, but he doesn't want to lose his Christian values as well. So the story really plays off that, and you just got to play the very end of it. We don't want to spoil everything.
Awesome.
But I think you'll have fun. Like Oswald's a really cool character, and you only get to see a tiny bit of him here, but he's great, and Finnr's great too.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about Finnr. Could I have not recruited him and just said
yes? So there is a different way that the story can play out, and he will. There's one where he will not come with you, but I won't spoil exactly how that works. And yeah, so if he joins your crew, then you will get not only to see him all the time on your longship, or you get to actually choose back in your settlement who is on your longship at any given time, because you can get more raiders than you can actually have on your ship. But when you assign them to your ship, they actually have a battery of stories they can tell you, and as you're sailing through England. So I don't know if you did any sailing and listened to the music. And
I did briefly, just when I was sailing up to where they had the wedding,
Elmenham, yeah.
Elmenham, yes.
Yeah.
I did notice that. That was really cool.
I do think that the best way to play this game will be to never fast travel, because riding through the countryside on the horse and jumping on your longship, it really immerses you in just feeling like you're moving up what they call the swan roads, the rivers of England. I think when I finally get to play the full game, when it's done, I think I will never fast travel.
I might try to join you there. I mean, that is something that's hard to do. Hard to kind of like trick yourself into like, I'm going to do this, but it feels rewarding in the end. So
exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you one more thing about that wedding. During the celebration, Broder offered to lay with me. Yeah. So I did. Yeah. And then I called him by his brother's name afterwards unintentionally, and it's a moment that made me and my demoists just laugh out loud, like we couldn't take it. But if I made the right choice, could I have pursued a relationship with Broder? Are we able to have those long-term things?
Not with him. He's more of a one-night stand, but there are longer-term relationships in the game. He's more of a one-night stand.
Okay, gotcha.
Well, that's really funny, because when I first played that one too, I also called him by his wrong name. And what's funny is that you feel so bad because their name is always on the screen in the subtitles. And even when it came time to say Broder or Brother, I was like, oh man, I haven't been paying attention.
Yeah, I had the same reaction. Yeah, that was a great little bit there. Is it possible, like in a similar scenario, not for Broder, but in other scenarios, to like piss off our clanmates and have them leave permanently?
I will say there is going to be friction with clanmates. I'll say that. Yeah.
From Marvelizer99 on YouTube, how does the story and the world benefit from the RPG elements and choose your own path method introduced in Odyssey, and how will it improve upon the previous game in order to tell a compelling story for Eivor?
Yeah. Oh, that's a big question. Well, I mean, I've mentioned this before. I think that I'm very interested in telling a very, a character-based story, a character who has a specific set of emotional, let's say, stumbling blocks, wants and needs and desires and things like that. For me, the choice aspect always, it was interesting to me that to be able to let the player at any sort of pivotal moment in a conversation, to be able to nudge the conversation this way and that way, saying like, oh, I'm interested in that, or I'd like to say it this way, or I want to know more about that detail, but still stay within the confines of a coherent character. Because I like writing characters who have sort of an emotional growth, and that stay true to some kind of essence. The best kind of choices then, therefore, become kind of like choices where there is no good or bad answer. There's only like, what part am I honoring at this point? And I think, for instance, the choice to kill or spare Rued, we removed a few story elements to not spoil a few key things, but everything leading up to that moment is all about honor. And I think that if you play the full story and you get to that moment, you might be going like, yeah, well, he's telling me to not kill him for Christian reasons. He should be tried under a lawful assembly of God. But for my own personal honor and how people will see me, I should really finish this. Hopefully, if we've done our job as a story, that's an interesting choice for you. And not, choices. I don't want choices to be more about, should I be mean or should I be nice? I want the choices to really reflect on, oh yeah, that's an interesting question. What would I do there? you know, like endless numbers of the trolley problem. You know, the trolley problem in human behavior, where it's like, okay, you can pull this lever to kill these people, or if you just do nothing, you kill these people. There is no right answer. There's more like there's an ethical dilemma, and I hope that we've littered this game in every territory with choices like that. That you feel, yeah, there's a good reason to do both, or any number of choices. Yeah, if we've done our job, that's the way it plays out, right? It really tugs at you, rather than some sort of superficial, you know, do I want this house red or do I want it blue or whatever, you know.
From Nat on YouTube, they want to know, will we see the return of Corridor Confessions?
Yes.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank
Lots
you.
of really cool ones. Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then will there be a popularity scale within the settlement? And if so, what are the consequences if you're too unpopular? Like, will this be reflected by a bar or something like that? Or just more of a, you can tell?
No. In general, I think we try to, one of the design philosophies of this game is we want to try to stay away from any kind of artificial number-based things. That's a good question, because there is a kind of impulse to, like, you know, like, I think one time we had this idea like, oh, we should have an influence meter and how much, you know, how much influence you have in the surrounding territories, but just kind of putting a number on it made it feel not real. And so we kind of stripped some of those out and just like, let's just do everything related to, you know, alliances and narrative. Like, let's do it in a narrative way. Let's make you go through the act of meeting people and convincing them to join your side, and or you know, doing something for them, rather than just, you know, like, kill 70 bad guys and then they'll be your friend. You know, that doesn't. So we moved away from a lot of that. So the settlement works in a similar way, where we try to make it more as narrative heavy as possible. We want you to have quests with people in the settlement. You solve problems in the settlement. You know, new settlers come in, new people to interact with, small little quests and little events and moments, and lots of little surprises, and we treated it that way. So we do ask you to grow your settlement, but it's really, we stayed away from it being formulaic. We want everything to feel handcrafted.
That's a great answer. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Did you have fun playing?
I had so much fun. I just wanted to experience as much as I possibly could, and I was really impressed by what I played.
Well, I'm curious to know what you found, just off the top of your head.
Sure, yeah. No, I found the fishmonger fight was really interesting. I found that horse. Just a lot of, like, the little icons, the wealth, the mystery, the power, that kind of those little elements. I found, like, a really creepy tree that started, like, clouding my vision, and I couldn't figure out what it was asking me to do. So I was,
okay, interesting.
Yeah, that was,
yeah.
And then I found, like, a tomb underground where there was a puzzle, and I'm not sure that it was finished yet, but there was some clues with notes and stuff. So,
oh, would that be Lyrian's estate?
Perhaps. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. I think there's a lot of content in this demo, and everyone I've talked to so far, they go off in different directions and they find different things, and so the collective whole of what people find will be really fun.
Yeah, I'm excited to piece together everything I missed with everything I played.
Cool. Well, you have to do a 1,000 things that you want to know about Valhalla.
People love that joke, by the way. They're like, how many things are there going to be before it comes out? Like,
yeah,
as many as I can put together.
Yeah. I'll say it officially. There are 26,345,000 things to know about Valhalla.
Perfect. I can just put that in my tagline.
So you can find all those things. Yeah, if you can find all those things, then there's nothing more to know about this game. But it's 26 million plus. So,
well, you guys heard it here
for a while. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Darby. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Cool, man. Thank you, and I love your videos. Keep them up, man.
Thank you so much.
Huge thanks to Ubisoft's PR creator team for giving me this opportunity, and to Darby McDevitt for the awesome interview. Like Darby said, I've got 26 million things to tell you guys about, so make sure you're subscribed and stay tuned for more Valhalla videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.